developing next-generation research and technology, facilitating connections between AFRL industry and academia, unlocking innovation through a culture of collaboration. This is the AFRL Regional Network Midwest.
Hi, my name is Diane, and in this hub project, we are looking at the inert case materials that are typically found around explosives and replacing them with reactive structures. Now, that benefit there is twofold. Firstly, by replacing inert with reactives, you then gain more energy for the system to be able to access. Secondly, by replacing them with structured materials, you can then create internal voids or surface features that then lead to preferential breakout. So the goal of this project is to experimentally create structure-property relationships that can then be fed into models for the digital designer to use to make into optimized systems. Thanks to AFRL Hub funding, we've been able to print a variety of reactive and inert cases. The reactive cases are out of aluminum PVDF, whereas the inert cases are out of PLA material. And we've been able to print them with a variety of internal voids or surface features in a symmetric arc length. And these voids are either all the way through the sample within the case structure itself, or they're on the outside of the sample forming petals or points that the material will have to break through once it's detonating. So then we can take a look at how our post-detonation fireball is formed and where the jetting is within it. So that way we can see how our materials are breaking out. So let's take a look at some of our preliminary results. One of the first things we can see immediately is that we have quite a bit of jetting due to different features in our samples. But we want to be able to put a quantity to that. So one of the ways we can do that is by defining a circularity parameter. The first thing is that we can quantify how much jetting we have relative to how much added surface area, or in this case we use an arc length of the front edge of the reaction front, and compare that to that of a circular reaction front at a given time. This then can be tracked as a detonation proceeds, so that way we can see how much jetting we are getting and at what points we are getting jetting. We can also then see when it starts to steady out as the reaction progresses. So at first you can see that we have initial relatively circular breakout. Then immediately following, we have a sharp increase in our circularity ratio. This indicates that you're suddenly getting a lot of jetting. You're getting some points that are leading out ahead of that of the rest of the reaction. Then we can see that it falls down to a relatively steady parameter. At this point, we can guess that we are going to see this continue to progress, but we do not have long enough timing on this reaction in order to see it actually completely extinct itself and die out. So one of the main things that we have to do is we need to do a further field of view with a longer time frame, so that way we can actually see the persistence of the fireball, and that is on the docket but has not yet been completed. So if we take a look at another view of this reaction front, we can see that we have two primary features in the reaction front that are associated inversely with the two primary features in the case. So the case has peaks and troughs due to the points and divots in the sun sample on the external side of the case. And we can see that a trough leads to a peak in the reaction front due to focusing effects. So if we analyze the reaction progression along the peak versus the reaction progression along the trough, we see that the peak has an initial run ahead of about 6.5 millimeters per microsecond, which is about 4 times faster than that of the steady state velocity. And so we can see that after that run ahead, it starts to hit a steady velocity, and it matches that of our trough. So if we bring back that circularity graph, we can see then that our run ahead is associated with the initial spike in circularity ratio. And then we can see that there's a small period of time in which our circularity ratio is a little bit steady, or then that begins to fall, which is associated then with the trough that has a slightly higher velocity, kind of playing a little bit of catch up. Then we hit a steady state where we have it kind of settled down into about a 1.1 circularity ratio. So you still do have some of those peak features present, but they've been a little bit softened by the catch-up of the trough. If we take a look at a selection of our cases, we can see that external surface features typically produce jets that are sharper than that of internal features. The internal features creating more of a petaling effect in the reaction front. If we change the geometries, both of the external features or the internal features, we can create combinations that provide different timing for when the jets are most prominent. However, there are still some major questions that are left open. First and foremost, how much energy are we adding to the blast by changing from an inert material to a reactive material? We can look at that through quasi-static pressure experiments, which we have planned here later this month. As mentioned before, we can also do experiments to measure fireball persistence. This would give us an idea of how long the case material is reacting post-blast. And lastly, we can go in the other direction and zoom in further to get a few frames on case fragmentation. This can give us an idea of the mechanics and behavior of the different case materials. So these are some of the open questions that we have yet to answer.
Current ordnance materials are reaching a limit, so the Department of Air Force needs new ways to increase lethality, reduce overall weapons mass, and provide multi-munition and multi-domain capabilities. Reactive materials, such as those that are being developed by Dr. Collard at the Purdue Energetics Research Center, will really open new pathways to optimize and tailor energetic materials performance. Dr. Collard has been able to demonstrate that void morphology and their placement affects breakout of behaviors and blast metrics, such as what she's measuring, which is circularity. Success in this endeavor has the potential to yield vital insights into how additively manufactured reactive materials can augment the lethality of warheads within the Department of Air Force. Furthermore, through the AFRL Regional Network Midwest Hub, these efforts are of strong interest to the Air Force Research Lab Materials and Manufacturing Directorate, or as we call AFRL RX. So here in RX, we also have ongoing efforts to develop next generation liner materials and to develop transition pathways for the integration of these next gen materials into future weapons concepts.